The following program is a production of Pioneer Public Television.
Hello and welcome to Compass, a new production from Pioneer Public Television. I'm Les Heen, your host for Compass. This is a weekly discussion of public policy and important issues facing our viewing area. This week, a look at the future of higher education and the liberal arts colleges in our viewing area, as well as a look at private colleges. This will be a two-part, two-week segment that will be furthered still next week. But first, we'll have a look at the University of Minnesota-Morris. Jackie Johnson speaking on why liberal arts colleges are gaining ground with higher enrollment and what they are doing to compete with state schools in our region. Here's a report from Pioneer's Laura K. Prosser.
There's a struggle right now for liberal arts colleges in rural areas to fill their halls and classrooms due to the opposing perspective that liberal arts degrees are for the elite and don't prepare students to join the workforce. However, if you are talking to Jackie Johnson, Chancellor of the U of M Morris, you might get another story.
Our mission is entirely undergraduate focused, and that is also the case with the wonderful private liberal arts colleges in this state. And so students have an opportunity to get a broad education, which is general education, to develop the skills, to do that in a residential setting where the whole individual is really nurtured and mentored. Probably most students who graduate from baccalaureate institutions across the country major in liberal arts disciplines. Only a handful of students really are able to complete their education at a liberal arts college.
It's this residential setting, but more so the size of the campus, that often makes people question, why should they go to Morris?
One of the things that I was concerned about when I first came to the University of Minnesota-Morris was an inclination to be apologetic about where we reside. That, oh, well, we're in the middle of nowhere, and, who would want to come here? And I thought that's just so not true. We have to get past that kind of barrier, and I think particularly for students who are thinking about us, who are coming from metropolitan areas. We have a wonderful alumna who graduated from Morris with a major in economics, went on to study at the London School of Economics. She's from a suburb of Minneapolis, and when she would talk to our prospective students, she would say very honestly, my parents dragged me kicking and screaming to visit the University of Minnesota-Morris. She said, no way was I going to go to school in this small town on the prairie. It just wasn't cool. And she said, I arrived on campus and couldn't believe it. I was just so taken with the faculty and the students and the staff. So it's this residential experience. And then because we're part of the University of Minnesota system, which is the land grant system in the state of Minnesota, and because of how we've defined our mission, the faculty at our institution are themselves researchers and scholars. They want to work with students in relatively small class settings. They want to get to know students, and then they want to bring students into their work and their research. And if you think about preparation for the workforce or graduate and professional school or living in a community, there is no better place to get that preparation. I'm biased, I know, but on a liberal arts college campus.
Another argument in favor of liberal arts, according to Johnson, is the scholarships and tuition help that Morris provides.
In higher education, there's the sticker price, and that can be daunting, but then there is the price that students actually pay. So there are multiple sources of funding that support people in their educational endeavors, from federal funds like Pell Grants that go to students who come from families with a particular income level. There's a state grant program. And then in addition to that, we have donor-funded scholarships, just like the private schools do. We have two really important competitive merit scholarships where we invite prospective students to campus who meet certain requirements, and they spend a day on campus and they interview with faculty and staff. They write an essay that's evaluated, and they compete for full tuition and about a half tuition scholarship. All of those things go into a formula that accounts for a tuition discount, because the University of Minnesota tuition is not inexpensive. It is still an investment that families are making, and so we're working hard to find ways to help students from a range of family income backgrounds to be able to come to campus and to do well there. And we're very much like private schools in that endeavor. We really have to find ways to support people as they're pursuing their educations, because the cost is not inconsequential. So we also have the Morris Scholarship. There's a stipend associated with that scholarship, and if a student wins that scholarship, they can spend this stipend, but not until their second year, so that would be the first time they could spend it. And they can spend it on a value-added kind of experience.
It's these added experiences that help students find a place in a community, no matter what community they are in.
In terms of higher education, the special role that liberal arts colleges play is that we serve students in an undergraduate-focused residential setting where students really have to be part of a community, with the expectation that every member of the community helps to shape the community. So you really get the ability to kind of tailor your out-of-classroom experiences to match what you're majoring in. Maybe it's in biology or philosophy, but you also get an education that's tied to living in a community, and learning how to be a responsible member of a community really allows for that full development and preparation, I think, for continuing a life well lived in the future.
With us now to talk about private colleges in Minnesota is Paul Cerkvenik. And Paul is the president of the Minnesota Private College Council. Paul, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Les.
So let's start with the Minnesota Private College Council, because when people hear that, they may not necessarily understand what private colleges are, but in short, we're talking about private, largely well-known four-year schools in Minnesota, right?
That's correct. The Private College Association is made up of 17 private, nonprofit colleges in Minnesota, all that have a commitment to a basic liberal arts education. Schools like Concordia College in Moorhead, St. John's and St. Ben's near St. Cloud, Gustavus, Hamlin, St. Thomas, McAllister, St. Olaf and Carleton, those kinds of schools. I think most Minnesotans are quite familiar with them, and they've been around for more than 100 years. Many go back as far as 150 years. Schools that were founded by immigrants, sometimes out of their faith tradition, always with a commitment to helping their children have an opportunity for high-quality education.
And they all have different backgrounds, of course, and I think it's interesting that you're talking about four-year schools, because they're I know one of the more recent schools in this category would be Bethany in Mankato, which many people would remember as a two-year institution, but now is four-year, and they're a member as well, right?
That's right. Our schools are all four-year schools granting bachelor's degrees. About half of them also grant graduate-level degrees, degrees in like a master's degree in business administration or public administration, or master's degrees in fields like healthcare or education. So they do both post four-year education and education beyond the four-year degree.
Well, when many people think about private colleges, of course, one of the things that comes up is affordability. because, of course, we've heard a lot of stories in the news the last few years about what's happening in affordability for colleges, whether it's private colleges or public colleges. So, what are we seeing right now in trends in the private colleges and how private colleges are addressing this issue of affordability in higher education?
Well, affordability is a real concern. An investment in higher education is expensive. I want to come back to that and talk about the value, the payoff, but you might be interested to know that over about the last 10 years, the net price, the price students actually pay at our college after you take into account scholarships, has been essentially flat when adjusted for inflation. In other words, the real price students pay is been really stable at our colleges for a decade.
So as you look at it, I know sometimes people would take a look at affordability in terms of not only the stability, but also as compared to, I know people used to say it's kind of like buying a new car. I remember there was a saying of a higher education person I knew about 30 years ago who said there was a point in time where if you bought a new car, it was sort of like a year at a private college, and you track that through the years. So some of these things, they are increasing, but so are many other things in life, was sort of his point.
That's right. One thing that's really been increasing at our colleges, Les, is financial aid provided by the colleges. Today, about 95% of the students that enroll in our colleges receive financial aid from the institution that does not have to be paid back. These are need-based and merit-based scholarships that most students benefit from. In fact, the average financial aid package at our colleges now is $19,000. So when you take into account that financial aid package, which includes sometimes a state grant or a federal Pell Grant as well, the average net tuition that a student pays is about $15,000.
So part of what happens, I expect, then, is when you have students who come in, they will look at a private college, a public college, and at the end of the day for them it comes down to looking at a couple of sheets of paper, a couple of different financial aid officers, perhaps several offers, and say, okay, how much am I going to pay out of pocket when I get there? And so for the private college councils, then part of the goal then to say that you end up looking comparable across all of those choices, that sort of helps people make their choice?
Yeah, I think our colleges try to be very competitive in the marketplace, but we also ask students to think about the value that they're going to get at a private college education. One of the important things to consider in this equation is our four-year graduation rates. Our four-year graduation rates are the highest in the state, the highest in the Midwest, and they're currently ranked third in the nation. Graduating in 4 years is really important because that's a way to keep the total cost of college down. There's good studies that show that if you need to take a fifth year or a sixth year to graduate, it's actually cheaper to be at a private college and graduate in 4 years than 6 years at public institutions. And if you take 5 or 6 years to graduate, the amount of student debt you end up with is substantially greater. So that's part of the value question. It's not just the price you pay, but what are you going to get out of the education, and are you going to be able to graduate in 4 years?
So is that a substantial challenge for colleges and working with young students then, is to say, okay, how much, not just how much is it for this year, but how much for 4 years, and how much if you have to take a fifth? And it sounds like some of those calculations in terms of translating that to the end user or the student could be a significant challenge.
Well, I think understanding the true cost of college is important for families and students when they make their decisions. The financial aid counselors at our colleges work hard to help ensure that students and families understands what the price they're really going to pay, and plan carefully to be able to pay that over 4 years, understanding that it's an important investment that's going to have a high payoff.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I remember reading years ago about higher education was that one of the most important or significant barriers, let's say, to people who've never had a family member go to college before is the fact that just that, no one in the family's ever gone to college before. So, and in Minnesota, as we look at this, we may have lots of families where there's 2, 3, 4 generations of college attendance. But let's talk a little bit about sort of those first and second year sort of situations where no one in the family's ever been to college before. How does that affect the ability of those families, and how does that affect their experience in higher education?
Yeah, those students come to college with less what is sometimes called college knowledge. They don't have as much of an understanding about how to navigate their way through college. It's a very new experience, and it's an experience that they can't look to their parents or to older siblings to help understand. At our colleges, we do a lot of work to help bridge that knowledge gap. Those students probably are very good students academically, but living on your own, taking academic courses at a much higher level is all a challenge for a student. And so at our colleges, one of the things that is so distinctive about our colleges is that because of their small size, students get a lot of personal attention. They can have close relationships with faculty members. We build important advising models into our approach to education so that students who come with the ability to succeed but maybe not fully prepared for college can find resources that will help them persist and graduate on time. It's very important to college success.
Well, it strikes me that there would be a number of, sort of a list of criteria that we're talking about here as people look at college choices, because there's not only one-year affordability, but there's multi-year affordability, the affordability of the entire degree. There is the support that they'll have when they'll get there, and all of those play into a role. But it also sounds like another part, and we didn't use the metric, but student-to-faculty ratio.
Right.
Because you will see that if you're looking at U.S. News and World Report or whatever those rankings are.
That's right.
And I know there's a lot of controversy over the quality of those rankings and what they really mean.
Right.
But some of those other numbers generated by colleges also is a big thing where people are sitting down and choosing. That student-to-faculty ratio is another important one that people often look at, right?
That's right. And at our colleges, that the majority of our classes have 20 students or less in them. And so that means you're in a learning environment where you're talking to the professor every time you go to class. You're not in a large lecture hall with 300, 400, 500 students. And you're having a lot of interaction. It's not just the professor talking at you. It's a dialogue between the professor and the students and among the students. And that's where real learning occurs. Students get to be really engaged in the topics they're studying. There's a lot of evidence that that makes for better learning outcomes. And most importantly, it makes students very engaged in their education. That's part of the reason why I think students persist and retain at a high rate in our colleges and why they graduate on time, because they get very engaged in the learning opportunities.
One of the other things that I've noticed about private colleges, at least when there are clusters of colleges, whether it's in a larger city or whether it's in the Twin Cities or whether it's a regional center, is that there are relationships between the colleges so that people may enroll in one college but yet take classes in another. So tell me a little bit about how that works, because that strikes me as something that a lot of people wouldn't even be aware of when they first enrolled in one college, right?
Right. Well, that's a more recent development in higher education, and I think that's something that's driven by a desire to give students a wide range of opportunities, but also to control college costs. Sure. Not everybody, if there's 3 colleges within a few miles of each other, it maybe doesn't really make sense that they each have a faculty to teach Russian, for example. Sure. There's not too many students who might want to study Russian, but there's enough, and it's an important subject to study. So maybe one college has a department that teaches Russian, another department has a college that teaches French, and another school maybe teaches the classics. And the students can have access to all 3 of those colleges when those partnerships and alliances are built. Those exist in the Twin Cities. The ACTC group Sure. is one. They exist in other places, up in the Concordia, Fargo-Moorhead area, Concordia, Mankato State. And
Moorhead State.
Moorhead State,
Yep.
excuse me. And the North Dakota colleges have a similar kind of a sharing arrangement that is really a good partnership for students and helps hold down the cost of college.
Sure. And when you mentioned the ACTC, I think that stood for the Associated or Affiliated Colleges of the Twin Cities.
Associated Colleges of the Twin Cities. That would be St. Thomas and the University of St. Catherine, Hamlin, McAllister, and Augsburg.
Sure.
They actually, for many years, had a bus that ran between those 5 colleges. It was kind of famous.
Yep.
Public transportation has become so good, and students are today are more mobile on their own, so the bus doesn't run anymore, but the curriculum sharing is the same. Students at any one of those colleges can take a class at any of the other 4 colleges.
So as we talk about the Twin Cities or we talk about the regional centers, Help me put Minnesota sort of within the landscape of the rest of the country. You'd mentioned a minute ago that there's a very high percentage of four-year degree completion, that was something of a leader for the private colleges. But what about the private college landscape in Minnesota as compared to the rest of the country? Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, I think in this work, I meet with my peers around the country and other higher education leaders around the country, and wherever I go, people say to me, oh, you've got a group of the best private colleges in the nation. I've heard CEOs from Minnesota say that same thing. And if you look at our colleges, there's no question that's true. We have as I said, we have among the highest four-year graduation rates in the country compared to other private colleges. This last year we were ranked third. We have been probably in the top 3 or 4 for a decade or more, maybe longer. And I think we also have a diversity of private colleges, and that's another strength. Our colleges serve traditional students, the 18 to 22-year-olds who are looking for a residential campus experience. We also serve non-traditional students, 25 and older, people who started a college education but didn't complete and now want to come back. We serve students in graduate programs. There's a growing demand for graduate level education in many fields, and our colleges have done that. They're very entrepreneurial. They are paying attention to what students want and what employers want, and they are changing with society and keeping up to the needs of students. That makes them, I think, leaders nationally.
Yeah. You mentioned corporations and corporate leaders and their role in this, which makes me wonder about after the four-year degree. Because, of course, a lot of people pay attention to say, okay, what happens when you get out? What is the job market like? What's the relationship? So for private colleges in Minnesota, what is it like when their graduates are going into the world? What are we seeing?
Yeah. Well, first of all, your viewers might be interested to know about 20% of our students go on to graduate level education right after they graduate. For those that don't, nearly all of them are employed within 1 year of graduation. The statistics are very high. They vary a little bit from college to college. Sure. Colleges track these things individually themselves, but in the high 90% have a job within 1 year of graduation. We're very proud of that. And our colleges, a part of what they do is not just give a person a degree, but they encourage experiential learning opportunities, internships, study abroad, undergraduate research projects. These are all things that employers value. They want a student who not only has gotten a good academic education, but has had some experience outside of college in the world. Our colleges invest a lot in those experiences. They also invest a lot in career services. They have staff who are helping students sort out their career plans so that while they're getting an education, they're thinking about what kind of work and career they want to have and what opportunities are out there for them so that they can find a job once they graduate.
Yeah, so it sounds like, again, and of course, when you look at, sort of concentrations of graduates and where they are, there's also the alumni piece that comes in where there's alumni as mentors, alumni members, as internship advisors, those kinds of things. I expect you see a lot of that as well.
Great question. I think one of the secret benefits of a private college education is the alumni networks our colleges cultivate. Our alumni are very loyal to the colleges they attended and to the students that are coming after them. They are donors, helping hold down the cost of college for students today, and they're interested in meeting those students, helping them network, helping them find jobs, mentor them, offer them internship opportunities in their businesses. That makes a big difference for a student who's 22 and who is just getting a start in the world. So,
yeah. One of the things I was thinking about too, one of the things that comes up for rural communities, for example, is the idea that we're always exporting young people. We're sending them off. Do they come back? But my sense is that with a lot of the Minnesota private college, or for that matter, public college, that a great many of the students who go through these institutions end up staying in Minnesota. Perhaps not in their hometown, but there's a fair amount of them staying in Minnesota. Is that true?
That's right. About 70% of our graduates, regardless of where they came from, stay in Minnesota after graduation. That's a good thing for Minnesota. And I think they stay because they develop deep attachments while they're here educationally that they value. And that's true of kids even who come from outside of Minnesota.
Well, I expect a fairly common pattern for a number of them is to go to graduate school somewhere else and then come back. So you may see those 2, 3, 4 years away and then back. Is that one of the things you see?
I think that's also very common, yes. They might pursue a graduate level education outside of Minnesota, but having in mind that they're coming back here to teach or to work in business or to practice law or whatever they decide to do.
Sure. Paul, as we close this out, let's give the viewers some ideas of additional resources or places they could go to. I suppose whatever college they're interested in, that's a great place to start, right? Just put in the college and go look at that particular college. Is that the best way for people to look?
Yes, especially for students and families. Reach out to any of our colleges. Take a tour. I would encourage all young students to tour colleges. Tour a range of colleges. Sure. It's really important that a student find a college that is the right fit for them. That's where you get the most success, when you're in a college environment that you feel is the right one for you. And then I would say, turn to our website, mnprivatecolleges.org. We have many resources for students and families there. And I would also say, look at the websites of the colleges. There's so much to learn at any of our college websites.
Good. Paul, with that, we have to close this up. Paul Cerkvenik, Private College Counsel, thanks for being with us.
Les, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. That's it for this week on Compass. Join us next week as we continue a look at the future of higher education. We'll have a discussion with some local input from the state schools and two-year colleges in the region. Thanks for watching.